you're listening to this. It's Carly, and welcome to another episode of Astro Lessons. We're calling this an informal part 3 to my 2-part series that I did yesterday over shadow work. And I'm adding on to it because I thought of this analogy metaphor. I even looked up the difference between analogies and metaphors last night. I still don't understand which is which. So we're going to say it's one or the other. And it is about shadow work and it is about pulling weeds in your garden. I am not trying to draw the similarity that your shadow is a weed that needs to be pulled, but I am drawing a comparison to the way we approach shadow work. So if you've ever tried to pull weeds, you know that if the soil is completely dry, those weeds usually they just snap off. Like you can't get any of the root and you just like snap off weed after weed after weed. You know it's going to grow right back. It's very frustrating. You don't really get anywhere. However, it rained here yesterday morning and the ground outside is still wet. So this morning I went outside and pulled weeds for like half an hour. And with a little bit of precise, intentional effort, you grab down by the ground, you patiently, steadily pull at it, and you get a whole foot long root coming up out of the ground because the soil's wet and the conditions are right for doing weed pulling. The same thing goes for shadow work. So think about that. As far as like when is it the right time to be performing shadow work? Typically, I would say a storm is probably going to roll through right before it's time to do shadow work. So a storm being some kind of emotional trigger, some kind of emotional outburst, depending on what that looks like for you. In the aftermath of something like that is the time to do shadow work. Proactive shadow work, it's a lot like pulling weeds when the ground is dry. You just kind of poke around at it, but don't really make any real progress. But in the light after an emotional wave runs through you, things look different. And that's the time. That's the most productive time that you can address your shadow. So that's my best advice is make sure that you're approaching it in the right conditions, in the right time, and that you're not forcing anything because otherwise shadow work can be extremely frustrating and you can poke around and honestly just waste a bunch of energy for stuff that you haven't really made a dent in it. So yeah, I hope that helps and I'll see you again soon.